Hello, welcome to Global Eye. With me, Parikshit Luthra. The big story we are tracking: prices of wheat futures have increased 11% since the 17th of July, when Russia backed out of the one-year-old Black Sea grain initiative. Not just wheat, prices of soybean and corn have all risen since the Russian announcement. So what was the Black Sea grain deal? This was a diplomatic initiative to avert a global food crisis, a deal brokered by Turkey and the United Nations in July 2022, according to which Russia would allow Ukraine to export wheat through 3 key seaports in the Black Sea. Ukraine, remember, is considered one of the biggest bread baskets in the world, with the country accounting for 10% of global wheat exports. The UN World Food Programme also shipped wheat from Black Sea ports, and as of July 2023, the programme had bought 80% of its grain stock from Ukraine. Over 725,000 tons of wheat left Ukrainian ports for countries like Ethiopia, Yemen, Afghanistan, Sudan, Somalia, Kenya, Djibouti during the implementation of the Black Sea Grain Initiative. So clearly this could lead to a spike in grain prices and food availability in some of the most vulnerable parts of the world. Why did Russia withdraw from this deal? Russia has said that West has not honored its part of the program. As part of the agreement, Western nations were supposed to lift sanctions on export of Russian food and fertilizer. The Russian government claims the West has been creating obstacles for its own export of grain and fertilizers. And not just that, Russia has said that any ship leaving the Ukrainian port will be treated as a military target. What could make matters worse is that Russia has also begun striking grain terminals in Ukraine. Let's now discuss the implications of this episode, which is developing in the Black Sea. We're now joined by our special guests. This evening, we're joined by Ambassador Rahul Chhabra, former Secretary, Economic Relations in the External Affairs Ministry. We're also joined by former Indian Ambassador to the WTO, Jayant Dasgupta. Ambassador Dasgupta, if I could first come to you, give us a sense of how this could impact food prices in the months to come, and by when will we really start seeing the impact of what's happening?
Ukrainians, as you mentioned, have been exporting approximately 10% of the world's traded wheat. But apart from that, they have also been exporting a lot of corn. Now, if you take the total wheat market, global market, it is about 200 million metric tons. Ukraine, in the best year in 2021, exported about 19 million tons out of that. Now, the issue about the Black Sea Grain Initiative is that the 3 Ukrainian ports of Odessa, Chernomorsk, and Pivdeny will not be effective in exporting wheat. But Ukraine has its land borders and railway networks, and through the Danube also it can export. And it has been using 3 Romanian ports, for instance, the Constanta, Galata, and Brela. And it has effected exports from there. The only issue is that the prices of Ukrainian wheat will increase. And as a consequence, there would be a price rise in the global market. So if we sum it up, the total availability of wheat in the global market this year is going to be approximately 10% less, or from the food stocks of wheat stocks that other countries are going to store, like the US or Russia, there could be a greater export from them, because the Russians in 2021 exported only about 33 million tons. But last year, when the Ukrainian wheat exports got hit, the Russians exported more. So the consequence of the Black Sea Grain Initiative getting terminated could be that the Russians get to export more wheat and perhaps corn as well. But as you know, in the context of global hunger, wheat plays a much more important point than corn, because corn is mainly fed to the animals. But wheat exports would affect large parts of Africa and the Middle East. where price rise will cause
All right.
a great
Ambassador
deal of
Dasgupta.
misery.
All right, Ambassador Dasgupta, I'm going to come to you once again. Let me get in Ambassador Rahul Chhabra at this point. Ambassador Chhabra, why do you think Russia is doing this? They have said the West is not keeping their part of the bargain. They're creating obstacles for export of Russian wheat, Russian fertilizers. Is that the only reason, according to you, Ambassador Chhabra?
Good evening, Parishad. Thank you for having me on your show. Yes, that is a big part of the reason that Russia is being stopped, or obstacles are being put in its path. But that is obviously not the only reason. It's also a function of where the war has reached at this moment of time. It's also a sort of a pressure tactic that Russia wants to play out this card and see where it gets them, how much they can use this card as a bargaining chip. Because, I mean, they do control access in the Black Sea, and they can obviously create a huge problem, because a lot of those waters are mined. Really, those mines, obviously commercial shipping is not aware of where those mines are. So these ships that were being used were being guided by the Russian forces across, so that they could cross these waters, which will now not be possible, in addition to becoming targets themselves. So there's a huge sort of implication of this move that the Russians have done. And just to put it in context of the 10% of the volume, what it means in terms of people, 400 million people depend on these Ukrainian supplies. So the 400 million is the number. Europe, Middle East, North Africa, and even up to China. So that is the sort of implication of this blockage. But of course, as Ambassador Dasgupta said, parts of it would be diverted by the land route and other ports, but that will increase prices, and it will increase the insurance costs, transport costs. So costs, inflation, food inflation is going to really badly hit globally.
Right. Ambassador Chhabra, we've also been seeing reports about Russian military striking grain terminals in Odessa. How do you think this could worsen things for Ukraine?
This will have a huge, again, sending out a signal that they are serious about it. They want to make a point. Hitting a grain terminal is really, I mean, they have made a serious point, because normally they would not have done it. So this issue that they've actually targeted it, 60,000 tons of grain have been destroyed. We are told that it was actually meant for China. So in that sense, it was meant for one of Russia's supporters, but then that doesn't matter. So they've just targeted the Odessa port where these grains are there. So they are making a point about the seriousness of the issue that they are raising. So the West will have to sort of look at what are the obstacles that they are creating in their exports, how they can ease it. Can be again I'm sure back channel discussions have restarted with Turkey and the United Nations to see how the entire issue can be smoothened over, and some of Russia's concerns can be met.
Right. Right. Ambassador Dasgupta, returning to you, how does this hit us closer home, back in India? We have been dealing with inflation, food shortages, like many other countries, ever since the war began. Daily meetings have been taking place to tackle food inflation. How could this impact things for the Indian economy?
As far as India is concerned, we are very small players on the wheat front. We exported till the 13th of May 2022 approximately 4% of the global wheat traded. Since 13th May 2022, we have put a ban on wheat exports, except for bilateral deals which we did with Bangladesh and a few other countries. So the crop in 2023 was approximately about 112 million tons of wheat in India. And our stocks in the PDS are adequate, I would say, slightly above the buffer levels that are dictated by the norms. So we have stopped exporting wheat. We are not likely to import wheat. So on the wheat front, I don't think we are going to get affected. As far as rice is concerned, we have banned the exports of broken rice. And of course, the El Nino phenomenon and the erratic monsoon this year will determine how much rice we get in the Kharif season. And that will determine what kind of procurement we get. But at the moment, there is no cause for concern on the rice front either.
Okay, Ambassador Chhabra, coming to you, do you think this time Russia will seek a greater deal for itself compared to what was struck in July 2022? Would it ask for more liberties, more relief from sanctions this time around when it's bargaining with the West, with the United Nations?
Yes, because it is going to, it is seeing the impact that this measure that they have taken has had. Countries are concerned, and therefore Russia is sort of maybe in a slightly stronger position. They've seen, and the world has also seen that if this sort of initiative goes through, there are benefits to the global good, in which case Russia is in a stronger position to either enforce this sort of ban on exports or give way and allow this initiative to continue. In addition, as you had mentioned, that the World Food Programme is procuring 725,000 tons of food grains from there. And this I have served in Kenya, Somalia. These are countries where they really depend on this. So if Sudan, Ethiopia, Afghanistan, I mean, these countries aren't able to now anymore get access to these grains, there can be huge social issues in those countries itself. We've already seen actually yesterday, day before, there are some sort of, they weren't really food riots, but there's been unrest in Kenya for different reasons. But this could all sort of escalate and very soon come to a boil.
Right. Ambassador Dasgupta, how can India help in averting a food crisis, especially in some of the most vulnerable parts of the world, in some of the poorest parts of the world? What role can India play in bringing Russia to the negotiating table and putting the Black Sea grain deal on track?
I think we have to look at the strategizing behind this. And it is also going to impact the overall economic condition of Ukraine as a whole. If you look at the figures of 2021, Ukraine produced about 86 million tons of grains, including wheat, corn, barley, etc. In 2022, it dipped to 53 million tons. And this year, it is likely to dip to 44 million tons. So overall, the Ukrainian economy, which is dependent to a great extent on agricultural exports, is going to get hit. And that is going to be part of the game which the two sides are playing. So India, of course, has a very important role to play. First, by bringing the two sides to the table and helping in getting a deal again going, persuading the Russians using its good offices that for humanitarian aid, for controlling global inflation, and this is one of the themes which we have also taken up in the G20 presidency, that the poor need to be taken care of in a much more robust manner than hitherto has happened. So this is the thing which India can do, use its G20 presidency to bring about a negotiated settlement and allow Ukraine to export. Of course, there would be a quid pro quo. The Russians, as Ambassador Chhabra has mentioned, want their fertilizer and grain exports also to go unhindered, and no sanctions to be imposed, especially on commercial shipping. That is something which the West will have to concede if it really wants to have a negotiated settlement.
Right, and clearly this was the big talking point during the G20 finance ministers meeting, as well. Everyone was concerned about Russia withdrawing from the Black Sea Grain Initiative. Ambassador Dasgupta, Ambassador Chhabra, thank you very much for joining us here on Global Eye and explaining us this crisis that we are seeing right now and how it could develop in the days to come. We're taking a short break here on Global Eye, but up next we will discuss about the US soldier, Private Travis King, who fled from South Korea to North Korea instead of boarding a plane to Texas. We will be discussing this in just a bit. Don't go anywhere.